JJK is a universe filled with so many lovable characters. Now that's mostly due to the fact that Gege Katami, the creator of JJK, is incredible at writing a diverse cast of characters that have different powers, different motivations, but all feel relevant. And this is an incredible rarity amongst mangakas, it feels like, because in a lot of the shonen stories that we get one or two important characters, and the rest of the characters around them kind of fall to the wayside. It's tough to get a full cast of characters where every individual in that cast feels as though they're powerful, motivated for their own means, and also have a unique personality. Now, my favorite character in all of JJK is Nobara. I have a tattoo of her. It's really hard to show a forearm tattoo. I think Nobara, amongst other female characters in JJK like Maki, stand as a golden example of what a female character trying to convey power in the more physical fighting sense should be written like in shonen anime. As obviously, power can be manifested in a myriad of different ways. It doesn't have to be how hard you punchy, because Nobara at no point in her entire career throughout JJK ever has to take a step back and not battle with the boys. She leans into everything. She's as brass and confident and beguiling as any male character in all of JJK. And I respect that a lot, while also finding her motivations and her power system incredibly interesting. But I wanted to make you aware of my bias before I got into the meat of what today's video was gonna be about. But more than anything, I just want to keep you informed that my bias isn't what's informing this video. See, because today I want to talk about the biggest bad in all of JJK. Sukuna. See, Sukuna is regarded as the greatest cursed energy user in all of Japan's history. The strongest cursed spirit that humanity has ever known. A demon with 4 arms that hailed over the golden age of Jujutsu. An entity so powerful that all of the most powerful Jujutsu sorcerers in the golden age of Jujutsu had to come together to defeat him. Well, for those of you who don't know, and I'm gonna be heading into somewhat manga spoilers here, in the manga, currently, Gojo and Sukuna are currently embroiled in an almost 10-chapter long battle. And considering the fact that Gojo is the only person on Earth who would be strong enough to battle against the likes of Sukuna one-on-one, this battle was always kind of in the making. It was even foreshadowed in the earliest parts of JJK when Yuji ate Sukuna's first finger and Gojo showed up and beat him down. And even after that, it was foreshadowed once again when Yuji and Gojo were talking if Gojo would be able to defeat Sukuna if he got all 20 fingers, to which Gojo said, "Nah, I'd win." For basically the entirety of JJK's manga, we have been building up to a point where Gojo and Sukuna would brawl it out. And here's the thing, I'm not going to talk about how this fight is going in the manga currently. If you want to know that, you can read it yourself. When the fight is over, I'm going to do a definitive breakdown of the entire fight because it has been one of the most complicated things to ever happen in manga history, but this is not that video. More than explaining how the fight has gone and what's happened and how we've gotten to where we are, today I more want to focus on the end. The end of the fight between Gojo and Sukuna and how somebody like Nobara could play into it. Because today, I want to talk about how Nobara will be the one to kill Sukuna. I know, what an absolutely ludicrous thing to say. It sounds as though Nick is taking a couple hits of that copium, right? And the more you know about JJK, the more you'll know that this is a somewhat ludicrous statement, but I believe I found a somewhat undeniable amount of evidence to prove this theory to be correct. So who knows, by the end of this video, you might also be taking a couple hits of that copium. But before we get to theorizing about anything, guys, please, for me, like this video, subscribe to the page, and hit that noti bell. And if you like hearing my anime theories or my anime hot takes, or just like listening to me talk about anime at all, you're gonna love my anime podcast, Otaku's Anonymous, where me and Danny Mata break down everything that happened in anime this week. It's available on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. So, Nobara. How does a grade 3 sorcerer find herself in a situation where she is the person to kill the strongest cursed spirit in the history of Jujutsu? Well, one, calling Nobara a grade 3 sorcerer is inaccurate. We learned in one of Nobara's greatest fights when she was battling alongside Yuji against 2 curse womb paintings, both of which were special grade curses, mind you, as they were created from special grade cursed objects, that Nobara is no joke. The fact that her and Yuji both took out special grade curses caused people like Mei, a grade 1 sorcerer, to recommend them for a grade 1 promotion. This is to say that Nobara and Yuji displayed a level of strength that grade 1 sorcerers recognized as their level of strength. And therefore, in that moment, Yuji and Nobara were identified by somebody at that level of talent to be at the level of talent required to be a grade 1 sorcerer. But even being a grade 1 sorcerer isn't close to the level of strength required to kill Sukuna. Even being a special special grade sorcerer isn't enough strength to kill Sukuna. We only know of 4 special grade sorcerers, only 3 of which are currently alive. Those 4 special grade sorcerers were Gojo, Geto, Yuki, and now Yuta. Only one out of those 4 special grade sorcerers is strong enough to go toe-to-toe with Sukuna, and that's Gojo, who massively outclasses the other 3. See, for a long time we believed that the gap between Yuta and Gojo was kind of close, as Gojo himself has said that one day Yuta could be stronger than Gojo. And indications pointed towards the fact that Yuta does have the possibility to be as strong, if not stronger than Gojo, especially when you consider the fact that through the usage of Rika, he has borderline unlimited cursed energy, something that Gojo does kind of have, but also doesn't. See, Yuta has way more cursed energy than Gojo, but Gojo, whenever he uses a cursed technique, uses an infinitesimally small amount of cursed energy, giving him basically limitless cursed energy. So while Yuta's overall number is higher, him using cursed techniques uses more cursed energy. Now, who runs out first, we don't really know, but what we do know is that Yuta has been watching this battle between Gojo and Sukuna, and Yuta, the supposed number 2 strongest jujitsu sorcerer on the side of the good guys, has realized by watching this battle between the 2 of them that they are in a class of their own. So how is Nobara, who's never achieved anything even remotely close to the level of strength as Yuta, let alone Gojo, gonna be the one to wipe out Sukuna? Well, in order to answer that question, we're gonna have to talk about Nobara. See, a lot of Nobara's strength can be tied to her innate technique, which is the straw doll technique. However, the reason that Nobara has become one of the stronger members of Jujutsu High isn't her innate technique. See, Nobara realized that her innate technique wouldn't be enough to overcome some of the strongest cursed spirits. See, because while her innate technique does allow her to use things like resonance and hairpin that we'll talk about a little bit later, her reliance on this technique kind of hindered her, as her reliance on this technique required that she be somewhat far from her enemy, meaning if an enemy was able to close the gap between Nobara and themselves, Nobara would be at a massive disadvantage, which is why Nobara had to learn to train in physicality with people like Maki, and we have absolutely seen the fruits of those labors. See, while Nobara may not be as strong or as fast as the likes of Yuji, training with the likes of Maki and Panda relentlessly has made Nobara a very good close-quarter combat fighter, and she's used this improvement to her physicality, speed, and strength in battles like the battle she had against Momo, the 3rd year from Kyoto High, where even though Momo had the massive advantage of being able to fly, Nobara was able to outmaneuver her and jump high enough to grab a string out of Momo's broom, which she could then use to destroy Momo's broom and bring her to the ground. And in the following battles that she has, like the battle with Yuji against the 2 Curse Womb death paintings, and the 2 battles that she has in the Shibuya incident, we get to see that this physicality, strength, and determination has only improved more with time. But what's genuinely more important than her confidence, strength, and speed is the fact that Nobara, slowly but surely, is figuring out the core of cursed energy. See, in the battle against the 2 Curse Womb paintings, Nobara does something that very few people have ever done before, and that is that Nobara, in her battle against Kekuzu, figures out the Black Flash. See, Nobara was able to figure out the Black Flash because in order to damage Kekuzu, she decided to use her own body as an effigy for her straw doll technique. And she was able to do this because Kekuzu used its blood manipulation ability against her to poison her, meaning that pumping through her blood was its blood. And thus Nobara, while nailing nails through her wrist to affect Kekuzu, gained a state of extreme focus through the pain. And this state of extreme focus allowed Nobara to unleash her first ever Black Flash. Now, in order to pull off a Black Flash, one needs to begin to understand the core of cursed energy. At least it's stated that pulling off a Black Flash and identifying the core of cursed energy feel very similar. And because of this, in Nobara's second battle during the Shibuya incident, and this is the part of the video where I'm going to start heading into manga spoilers, so if you don't want manga spoils, I would recommend skipping this part, but also probably the rest of the video because it's all going to be about the manga. Nobara finds herself in combat against Mahito. Specifically, Mahito's double, because he's figured out how to clone himself. Now, Nobara has next to no information about Mahito, and thus she really doesn't know the most effective way to battle against him. However, upon realizing that Mahito was much too powerful for her to take anything but fully serious, she decided to try to get in contact with the core of cursed energy once again. Now, the core of cursed energy is a term I keep saying over and over and over again. So what is it? Well, the best way to explain it is that when one reaches the core of cursed energy, they unlock all of cursed energy to themselves. That is to say that one who reaches the core of cursed energy is able to do whatever they want with their cursed energy within the confines of their innate techniques. The best example of somebody finding the core of cursed energy is Gojo in his battle against Toji, as Gojo finds the core of cursed energy after Gojo stabs him in the neck and the chest chest and the thigh, and in this moment, Gojo has to switch his brain into panic mode to try and figure out how to use reverse curse technique. And as he's laying there dying, he reaches the core of cursed energy that teaches Gojo exactly how to use reverse curse technique and saves his life. This is exactly what Nobara is going for in the battle against Mahito, and she states that since she was able to find the Black Flash previously, that she should be able to find the core of cursed energy because the feelings are similar. Nobara then goes on to fight one of the most impressive fights in the entirety of the Shibuya incident. See, Nobara tricks Mahito into believing that she's trying to attack him physically, something that she deduces can't hurt Mahito. And once Mahito believes that the only thing in her arsenal is attacking her physically and trying to do him physical harm, he lets down his guard to a somewhat degree, at which point Nobara decides to unleash a soul attack, which she lands, attacking Mahito's soul directly and causing him massive damage. See, the reason that attacking Mahito's body doesn't do anything to him is because he has an innate technique called idle transfiguration that allow him to change the shape and size of the soul of whoever he's touching. And since he's always touching him, he can always manipulate his body into being healed, so long as his soul isn't damaged. And Nobara deduces this and thus attacks his soul directly and almost kills Mahito's double, one-on-one against a special grade cursed spirit, and not just any special grade cursed spirit, one of the strongest special grade cursed spirits. Nobara identified a game plan, executed it flawlessly, and basically won. And it was at this point that Mahito realized that she, just like Yuji, was a distinct threat to him, and thus she, just like Yuji, needed to be eliminated. Now, unfortunately for Nobara and any fans of Nobara, Mahito's real body shows up and taps her on the face, which is all Mahito needs to do to win against you, at least sort of, because once Mahito touches you, he's able to cast his idle transfiguration onto you. And it's at this point that Nobara has one half of her face blown off, which kills her. So now you're asking the incredibly logical question, Nick, if Nobara is dead, how is she going to be the one to kill Sukuna? More importantly, what does Nobara's strength have to do with any of this? Well, because with the bad news also comes good news. Because here's the thing. Well, a lot of people believe that Gojo will be victorious in his battle against Sukuna. I just don't see it happening. Let's not be fake for even 2 seconds here. Yuji isn't necessarily the main character of JJK, and that's not a bad thing. It's an ensemble cast that's led by certain characters in different points of the story, and Gojo has been as much of a main character as Yuji has for a large part of the manga. And this is because Gojo is the one, blessed by both heaven and earth, and arguably the strongest person in the JJK universe. However, unfortunately, this strongest person in the JJK universe isn't loved by the person who made him. Gege Akutami, the mangaka of JJK, is very vocal about the fact that he does not like Gojo. And that's why Gojo was locked away for almost 100 chapters. Because the problem with having Gojo around is that when Gojo's around, you can just send him to figure anything out, and he probably will. So in order to allow every other character in JJK to have their storylines and to progress their character development, Gojo needed to go bye-bye, at least for a little bit. But Gojo's out now, and he's battling against Sukuna, and it's probably the best fight in the entire manga. Before this, it was Hikari and Kashima. That fight is so good. So why wouldn't Gojo be the person to win? Well, one, once again, because Gege doesn't like him, and two, because Gojo doesn't really have a way to win against Sukuna in a way that he would want to. See, here's the thing. Sukuna has to exist within other people's bodies. Because, like we already stated, Sukuna was defeated 1,000 years ago during the Heian era by a congregation of all of the strongest Jujutsu sorcerers of the time. And thus Sukuna's body was split into 20 fingers that each carry a part of his cursed energy. Sukuna is currently at 19 fingers, meaning that he is at 95% strength capacity, which is basically 100 for all intents and purposes. Now, if hypothetically Gojo was just battling against Sukuna, of course he could win, because he could just pop off Sukuna's head and then we're all happy, Sukuna's dead. But that's not the situation. See, for the majority of the manga, Sukuna existed in Yuji's body. However, about 20 or so chapters ago, that changed. See, Sukuna's always had a weird fascination with Megumi ever since he saw his techniques, as Sukuna understood that Megumi was a 10 Shadows technique user, though not a 10 Shadows technique user living up to the fullest of a 10 Shadow techniques user's abilities. And thus Sukuna's always had an eye on him, and about 20 chapters ago, Sukuna got what he wanted. That is to say, he got Megumi. See, Sukuna had a binding vow with Yuji that whenever he sat in chain, he would be able to take over Yuji's body for a minute, so long as he didn't hurt any humans. However, all humans didn't apply to Yuji, apparently, as when Sukuna yells in chain, he was able to rip off one of Yuji's fingers and force feed it to Megumi, and thus the consciousness was switched. So now the Sukuna that Gojo is battling against is in the body of Megumi, and thus for Gojo to defeat Sukuna, technically he would probably have to kill Megumi, something that while Gojo might seem as though he doesn't care about, he absolutely does. See, this fight has been absolutely brutal for Megami. He's been hit by Limitless Void 4 times, his body has been thrown through buildings, knocked unconscious, and obviously Sukuna has been able to heal his body over and over and over again using reverse curse technique. However, curse energy runs out eventually, and eventually one of these blows launched by Gojo will spell the end of not only Sukuna, but also Megami. That is, assuming Gojo were to win. But that's not what Gojo wants, even though it appears as though Gojo doesn't care about Megami's body. We know this isn't what Gojo wants because Gojo loves his students. And while he might seem disconnected and maniacal at some points, his students are genuinely the most important thing to him. This is why Gojo's been holding on to the last of Sukuna's fingers, because he knows that when the 20th finger is fed to Yuji, Yuji will be killed. And thus Gojo is making sure that the 20th finger never goes into Yuji. Or I guess now Megami. And thus if Gojo is putting his neck on the line against the Jujutsu Society to make sure that Yuji is never executed, why would he willingly execute Megami? For the achievement of a greater good to wipe out Sukuna? Maybe, but what if there was a way around all of that? See, let's talk about Nobara's innate technique real quick. Straw doll technique. With straw doll technique, there comes 2 abilities, resonance and hairpin. Hairpin is just her imbuing nails with curse energy, hitting them, and then having them explode. It's not important for what we're talking about today. It's cool, but not important. What we're going to be talking about today is resonance. The resonance allows Nobara to apply her curse energy to an enemy through the effigy of a straw doll. In order to pull off this technique, Nobara needs to have some genetic material or some components of what she's trying to destroy. Now, this can be one of the fibers out of the back of the broom or an entire severed arm. Now, the more of somebody that Nobara has, the more critical the spots that she can attack using her cursed energy. So, well, if hypothetically she had something like a bloody fingernail from you, she could attack things like your hands or your feet and non-vital parts of your body. However, in the case of Kekizu, because she had an entire severed arm, she was able to attack any part of his body, which allowed her to drive nails through his heart at a great distance away. So the more that Nobara has of you to nail her straw doll into, the stronger her technique. And whose severed limbs does the Jujutsu Society have access to? Sukuna. But I know what you're saying. They don't have access to those severed limbs anymore, and to a certain degree, you would be correct. Like I've already stated, Sukuna has consumed 19 out of his 20 fingers, with supposedly the last of those 20 fingers being with Gojo, who's currently locked in a death battle against Sukuna. And thus, if there's only one of Sukuna's fingers left, and that one finger is with Gojo, how is Nobara going to get her hands on it? Well, I present to you the point that Gojo doesn't have Sukuna's 20th finger. Now, I'm not saying that Gojo never had the finger. I'm saying that he currently doesn't have it. See, because here's the thing. While Gojo is incredibly confident and incredibly powerful, why on earth would he bring in Sukuna's 20th finger to a battle against Sukuna? Yes, 1000% does Gojo believe he's going to win. But Gojo's also incredibly intelligent. Why would he bring one of Sukuna's fingers into battle against a 19-finger Sukuna? Because Gojo doesn't even necessarily need to lose for Sukuna to get his hands on the 20th finger. It's not like Gojo has access to pocket dimensions. While he can play with space and orient it using his limitless and his infinity, we've never once seen him use something like Toji's cursed spirit that acted as a pocket dimension for him that he would swallow that held all of his weapons, or open a pocket dimension that he could reach into and snag things out of, which would mean that Gojo holding on to Sukuna's 20th finger would mean he would just need to have it on his person, which is a wildly reckless and dangerous thing to do against somebody whose main ability is cutting. Like, what if one of his pockets got sliced and then, oh, there's the 20th finger? And here's the thing, Gojo himself never states that he has the 20th finger. It's Sukuna who states that Gojo is probably holding on to the 20th finger to stay the execution of now Megami. So where would the best possible place be to hide the 20th finger? With a person nobody even thinks is alive. But I know what you're saying.
Nick, isn't Nobara just straight up dead?
And the answer to that is yes. Kind of. At least it was confirmed that she died. See, after getting hit with Idol Transfiguration, Todo and Todo's little brother show up on the scene to help Yuji battle against Mahito. Now, Todo's little brother has a very interesting innate technique. He has a technique that allows him to stop wounds. Not stop wounds from happening, but let's say hypothetically I get cut. If he were to apply his innate technique to my cut wouldn't get any worse and it would stop bleeding. However, if I were to get cut on this side of my arm, it wouldn't make any difference. So immediately after Nobara dies, Todo's little brother goes up to her, I guess now corpse, and confirms that she has no pulse and is not breathing. However, he applies his curse technique to her and states that while she is technically dead, she had only died a couple of seconds ago. And thus, essentially, he froze her corpse seconds after her death, meaning that so long as his innate technique is still applied to her, it would be as though she just died seconds prior, meaning that her body and her arteries wouldn't decay, meaning if hypothetically Todo's little brother were to get her to a reverse curse technique user, that they would be able to heal her as if she had just died seconds prior. Now that is The last time we saw Nobara, chapter 126. We are in the 230s now. It has been almost 2.5 years since we've seen Nobara, and a lot of people believe this is because she just kicked the bucket, but we've never gotten confirmation of that. Yuji and Megami have a conversation where Yuji asks Megami what happened to Nobara, to which Megami doesn't really answer, and Yuji just goes, I see, or something like that. There is no confirmation of whether or not Nobara's death is permanent. On top of this, having Toto's little brother come in and apply his innate technique to her in order to keep her body essentially on ice is weird. If you're trying to darken the themes or send Yuji down into madness, why not just have Nobara die? Why say that there's a non-zero chance that she survives? And while some people are going with the line of logic that it's been too long since her passing and therefore she'll never be brought back to life, I'd like to remind everybody that in universe, it hasn't been that long. Gojo is sealed in the prison realm for 12 days. The entirety of the culling game lasts less than 2 weeks. People believe that if Nobara survived, we would have got a confirmation of it earlier. But if you think about it, that doesn't really make a lot of sense. See, through the medium of who would we be informed that Nobara had survived? Would it be Gojo? Would it be Yuji? Would it be Megami? The three people that the story seems as though it revolves around. Well, by the time of Nobara's death, Gojo had already been sealed. And considering the fact that the prison realm is a timeless pocket dimension, there was no way that Gojo was going to hear about Nobara's health. That is, of course, until he was released. But Yuji and Megami weren't sealed, so why weren't they told? Well, think about it. In Nobara's battle against Mahito, there's a possibility that she identified the core of cursed energy, and thus pushed herself to a level capable of taking on some of the strongest cursed spirits with the right circumstance. I mean, Mahito, genuinely one of the strongest cursed spirits in the entirety of JJK, deemed her to be a threat. So if Mahito believed that she was a threat, isn't there a possibility that she could incur at least a small amount of damage against the likes of Sukuna? Especially if during the fight against Mahito, she actually did find the core of cursed energy and underwent a massive power-up, similar to what Gojo goes through in his battle against Toji. And obviously, I am not saying that Nobara is going to become the next Gojo. Identifying the core of cursed energy and possibly figuring out things like reverse curse technique is a massive power-up. And thus, if Nobara was identified upon being revived as a last resort against Sukuna, why would you tell the person who holds Sukuna in his body at that moment, Yuji, or Yuji's closest friend and goal of Sukuna, Megami? As by telling either of those people that Nobara was alive would probably be telling Sukuna that Nobara was alive and threat. And while there's genuinely no defense against Nobara's technique, if Sukuna was made aware of the fact that her resonance technique could damage him, he would probably go out of his way to destroy her. And thus, I don't believe that Gojo has the 20th finger. I believe that Nobara does. You're probably asking the rather logical question, how could Gojo have gotten this finger to Nobara in the first place, considering the fact that he was sealed in the prison realm? Well, while Gojo does fly out of the prison realm and immediately make himself very known to both Kenjaku and Sukuna, he states that he won't battle them until December 25th, which means that between the release of Gojo and the battle between Gojo and Sukuna, there was a blank period where we saw nothing. And we know during this blank period that Gojo gathered a bunch of Jujutsu sorcerers who would help him in his battle against Sukuna, barrier specialists and people who would be able to boost his cursed energy. So if we know that during this blank period that Gojo was preparing for the battle against Sukuna, wouldn't possibly providing Nobara with the 20th finger of Sukuna also be preparation?
But Nick, Nobara died.
So how could she be brought back to life? Oh, actually, it's pretty simple. Reverse curse technique. And we know that people who are dead can be brought back with reverse curse technique. In fact, it happens about 20 chapters after Nobara's death. See, after Yuta is assigned to be Yuji's executioner, he kills Yuji, stabs him right through the heart. However, in the same moment that he kills Yuji, he also uses reverse curse technique to bring Yuji back to life, meaning that reverse curse technique can bring the dead back to life so long as you get to their bodies quick enough. Now, was anybody around in Shibuya to heal Nobara after her death? No. However, considering the fact that her body was placed on ice, putting her in an eternal state of only being dead for the last couple of seconds, her situation is very similar to that of Yuji after he was stabbed by Yuta. And therefore, Toto's little brother could have got her to a reverse curse technique user like Shoko, who, considering the fact that Nobara had only been dead for a couple of seconds, would have been able to bring her back to life. But honestly, we may not even need Shoko, because if we remember what happened to Gojo when he identified the core of cursed energy, we can extrapolate the fact that Nobara may not actually need somebody else to heal her. See, when Gojo identified the core of cursed energy, he figured out reverse curse technique, something that previously he couldn't figure out for the life of him. And thus, if in her battle against Mahito, Nobara was able to grasp the concept of the core of cursed energy, she could very possibly just heal herself. But regardless of how Nobara ends up back alive, her being alive is important, because with the ability to attack the soul, and just the soul, Nobara is pretty much the only solution to Sukuna. Sukuna inhabits other people's bodies, and thus there's two ways to kill him, one easy way and one hard way. The easy way is killing the body in which he inhabits. This was the plan for Yuji, have him eat all 20 fingers and then execute him. However, the second option that nobody considers, because soul manipulation abilities are so rare, is killing the soul within the body. And since we know full on that Sukuna's soul and the soul of the body that he's inhabiting do not merge but coexist, if you can call it that, we know that Sukuna's soul should be able to be attacked separate from the soul of the body that he's inhabiting. So if hypothetically Nobara is still alive, she should be able to do something that nobody else can: attack the soul, and just the soul, of Sukuna, which I know a lot of people are saying probably still wouldn't be enough to kill Sukuna, because even if Nobara had one of his fingers, she wouldn't have enough cursed energy to be able to definitively damage to a killing level Sukuna. But I'd like to remind you that Sukuna is currently getting mollywopped by Gojo, and thus I'm not saying that Nobara is going to solo Sukuna. What I am saying is that Nobara offers Gojo a definitive way out of the battle against Sukuna without killing somebody he views as a son, and thus my theory on how the battle against Sukuna is going to end is that Gojo is going to put him in a weakened state. And just when it appears as though this weakened state of Sukuna is about to finish off Gojo, a nail jump out of his heart. But since Megami's body is not his own and he is simply a soul within the body controlling Megami's flesh puppet, that nail will not be physical. There won't be a spike sticking out of Megami's chest. But that nail will be the final nail in the coffin against Sukuna, which will not only reveal the fact that Nobara is back alive, but will also kill Sukuna in a way that saves Megami. Because it's not like we haven't done this before in JJK. Our main character, Yuji, died and was hidden from the Jujutsu Society because revealing that he was alive wouldn't be advantageous to the goals of certain people within said society. If Nobara is genuinely identified as somebody with a useful move set against Sukuna, why would we reveal two people whose information and memories could be accessed by Sukuna that she was still alive? Not to mention that a girl that everyone believes to be dead is the perfect hiding spot for a 20th finger. And thus, not only is Nobara still alive, but she will be the one to kill Sukuna. But who knows? Maybe it's the copium talking, but are you starting to feel a little of that copium pumping through your blood? Tell me in the comments below, and while you guys are down there, please, for me, like this video, subscribe to the page, and hit that noti bell. Not to mention, bro, like Maki all scarred up is such an iconic look. Imagine Nobara, that'd be sick.